So listen, I know the holidays is supposed to be about family, friends, love, Yuletide cheer, gift giving, all of that stuff. But for some people, for some of us, my family's not excluded. For some of us, the holidays is a reminder of people we've lost around these times. Check some of this stuff out, man.
This morning, an update in the infamous decades-long cold case surrounding the murder of 6-year-old beauty queen Jonbenet Ramsey. Sources telling ABC News that progress is being made in the investigation.
Obviously a homicide, a criminal act has been committed. Somebody did it.
According to sources close to the investigation, a team of experts is going through the remaining evidence, using the most modern scientific and cold case techniques to try and crack the case. It was the day after Christmas in 1996 when Jonbenet's parents discovered their daughter was missing from their Boulder, Colorado home. A handwritten ransom letter demanding $118,000 was left behind on the stairs by the kitchen. Hours later, the father, John Ramsey, finding the young girl dead in the basement. The unsolved murder captivating the nation.
Jonbenet's murder has frightened residents of Boulder.
No one could believe something could happen to a family like that. And I think that was part of the intrigue.
Jonbenet's parents and brother cleared of her murder in 2008 after additional DNA evidence was discovered.
Someone killed this 6-year-old child.
The crime now back in the public eye, due in part to the newly released Netflix docuseries, Cold Case, Who Killed Jonbenet Ramsey? The Boulder Police Department releasing its annual update a month earlier, citing increased attention on the investigation.
I beg anyone that has information that has not been previously shared with us to contact us, and that includes those responsible for this crime. Please help us in our efforts to secure justice for Jonbenet.
Okay, so I know what I'm gonna be watching tonight now. I didn't know this case was on Netflix, so I can get more information about it. You know what I mean? And Netflix, bro, I don't know what they did or who they hired and put in control of their crime documentary series, but they've been knocking them joints out of the park. If I sit down and watch a crime docu-series, my whole day is shot. I can't do nothing else, bro, because I go from one to the other to the next one to the next one, bro. I be hooked.
Now a team of experts are going through evidence looking for answers in the case's remaining mysteries. ABC's Alex Stone joins me now for more. Alex, this was a case that captivated the nation then and now, really. It's captured the nation for decades because we never got an answer here. So what can you tell us about the evidence experts are sifting through now?
Well, this is mainly DNA evidence, and its DNA evidence has been known for a very long time. That was in Jonbenet's underwear that they have looked at. They have tried to match over many, many years to any male. They know it is a white male, but they have never been able to identify whose DNA that was in her underwear. There have been a number of people, John Mark Carr, you may remember that name, in 2006 who have come forward claiming that they killed Jonbenet Ramsey, but it was a DNA that then led police to say, no, that they made it up. So it's really looking at that DNA, looking at new technology, genealogy that has been used to solve so many cold cases, and to see if they can do it, but they don't know.
So wait a minute, somebody came out with a confession? And who confesses to a crime and just wants to go to jail if they didn't do it? And the police were like, nah, it couldn't have been. Huh? You do know there could be evidence that y'all might have missed that does point to that person. I don't know, like, that's insane. I wonder how the family took that. What do you mean we let somebody who's confessed at least detain that person or hold them since they confessed? You didn't ask them to confess. They came forward and confessed. So why don't we hold them until we can rule them out without a shadow of a doubt? I hope they did that, bro. I hope they did that. Because if a person, and let's remove him, if a person confesses and say they did it, and you say, nah, he didn't do it, and then he goes out and does it again, what should happen to the police department? That would be my question. What should happen to them?
New DNA technology lead to an arrest here? Do they feel like they can finally get those answers they haven't been able to get in the past from that, Alex?
The potential is there, but Diane, our sources are telling us while progress is being made, they don't know if they're ever going to find a suspect. We're almost 30 years in now, 28 years in. Even if they do, is that person alive any longer? If they could identify who it was. This was degraded DNA that was in her underwear, and they have never been able to really track it down and really be able to decipher who it belongs to. Now, again, using the technology that a number of cold cases have been able to use in recent years through genealogy, maybe they'll be able to find somebody. Our sources are saying they just don't know. They are making progress. There is that multidisciplinary team that you mentioned with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and Boulder Police, that they have been trying to go through the evidence again, digitize what evidence that they do have. But when it comes to DNA, they are hopeful, we are told. But if it will actually lead to somebody after 28 years, they don't know.
It was supposed to be a time for celebrating the holidays, but on December 26, 1996, the Ramseys were instead grieving the loss of their youngest child, 6-year-old Jonbenet Ramsey.
The child beauty queen had been found murdered in the basement of the family's Boulder, Colorado home.
Now, nearly 3 decades later, a new Netflix documentary is bringing the horrific murder back into the spotlight and asking the question, who killed Jonbenet?
This case shocked the nation and became a tabloid obsession, and this is what some of the actual news coverage looked like back then.
Our first report begins 1 year after the tragic murder of Jonbenet.
It has been a year since a 5-year-old girl became more famous than most people do in a lifetime. She did it by dying. As we hear from Alicia Acuna, while Jonbenet Ramsey's name is well known, her killer is still anonymous.
Hold on, who wrote that opening monologue? Who signed off on that? Like that? Oh man, I ain't like that at all. Did you hear how the way she said, man, if that's my daughter, bro, I'm feeling some type of way. I'm sorry. It probably wouldn't take me much to feel some type of way, but I ain't like that opening when you're referring to my daughter.
The morning of December 26, 1996, investigators are called to a kidnapping that quickly becomes a murder investigation. The case is anything but normal. Jonbenet Ramsey's parents, wealthy and prominent in the Boulder community, tell police they found a 3-page handwritten ransom note on the back staircase of their home. Police find no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the snow. John Ramsey tells them he locked all of the doors before going to bed. Police search the home but find nothing.
We were gearing up to manage a kidnapping situation.
Hours pass without any word from a kidnapper. Police ask John Ramsey to check the house to see if anything is out of place. Ramsey, it is later reported, immediately heads to a room in the basement. Minutes later, he emerges holding his daughter's body. The autopsy indicates Jonbenet was found with a ligature around her neck, a fractured skull. According to search warrants, police believe Patsy Ramsey wrote the ransom note, but have no conclusive proof. In April, the Ramseys give their first formal interview to police, and Boulder DA Alex Hunter publicly calls the Ramseys a focus of the murder investigation.
But let me assure you that I did not kill Jonbenet.
I did not kill my daughter, Jonbenet.
The Ramseys say an intruder killed their daughter. Meanwhile, the police investigation is crumbling. The lead investigator announces in October he is leaving the force. Nearing the first anniversary, police introduce a new lead investigator, Mark Beckner, who assures the news media and the public the case is not stalled.
I'm confident that it will be solved, yes.
And Beckner says the Ramseys are still a focus of the investigation.
They do remain under an umbrella of suspicion, but we're not ready to name any suspects.
In Boulder, Alicia Acuna, Fox News.
Just a year and a half after the little beauty queen's murder, conflicts, changes, and accusations shake up the investigation, and still no arrests have been made in the case.
One of the lead investigators in the murder of Jonbenet Ramsey has now quit the case, accusing the Boulder DA of mishandling the investigation in favor of politics. We get that story from reporter Greg Lamott.
A former detective in the Jonbenet Ramsey murder case wrote a blistering letter of resignation attacking the district attorney and claiming, among other things, quote, there is evidence critical to the investigation that, to this day, has never been collected, as well as other evidence that sits today untested in the laboratory. In a letter obtained by ABC, former Detective Steve Thomas claims prosecutors in the district attorney's office blocked efforts to subpoena the parents' telephone and credit card records and claims evidence was improperly shared with the Ramsey's attorneys. Thomas, in the letter, said his primary reason for leaving his job is the belief the district attorney's office continues to mishandle the Ramsey case. It's been more than a year and a half since Jonbenet Ramsey was found strangled and beaten in the basement of her Boulder home. Early on, police said the 6-year-old girl's parents were a focus of the investigation. But no one has been arrested. Thomas, in his letter, said, quote, "It is my belief the district attorney's office has effectively crippled this case." In response, Police Chief Mark Beckner issued a statement saying, quote, "I am disappointed that Steve felt the need to vent his frustrations in the investigation." Beckner went on to say,
he ain't just vent, he wanted to go on record and say what he thought. That was smart by him. I get why he made that public and everything, because he wanted to be on record saying, I had nothing to do with it. If something comes out later, because that's how it usually happens. It comes out later and everybody goes down for it. I'm going on record letting y'all know, and I'm leaving. But my question is, who's her parents? Because normally when you see interference in a case like that causing people to mishandle evidence, it's normally like politicians, people who hold high-ranking positions, have reach and able to get people in their back pocket and make a phone call. So I wonder who our parents are or who they are connected to. That can be the case sometimes too. You have to look, because they keep saying that they aren't ruling them out.
We continue to work closely with the DA's office on completing assigned tasks. I continue to have confidence in the investigative team. District Attorney Alex Hunter in July was expected to make a decision as to whether to present the case to a grand jury, but no decision has been announced. A spokesperson for Hunter says the district attorney is out of town until next week, and it's not known if he will respond to Thomas's letter of resignation. Greg Lamont.
Well, the bickering between the police and prosecutors in the Jonbenet Ramsey murder case is becoming legendary, yet no arrests have been made in the case. Julie Hayden reports that some in Colorado think it's time the governor got involved.
Boulder detective Steve Thomas said he was so upset about the way the Boulder DA's office is handling the Jonbenet Ramsey murder case that he turned in his badge for a carpenter's hammer. Thomas was one of the lead detectives in the Ramsey case, and in a scathing resignation letter, he blasted Boulder DA Alex Hunter. While Thomas's message was heard loud and clear all the way to the governor's office.
The content of that letter was pretty direct and forceful.
Governor Romer explained that he has asked 4 metro area district attorneys to get together and give him advice and counsel on whether he should intervene and appoint a special prosecutor. He says he'll meet with them in person if they want or accept a letter of recommendation. And he hopes to have a decision in 5 to 7 days.
The issue now is, as you go forward, will you get a better and more just solution to this, maintaining the present leadership or changing that leadership?
Craig Silverman says he'd be surprised if the 4 local DAs recommend a special prosecutor, but he says it might help minimize the conflicts between the Boulder cops and the DA should the case ever go to trial.
Detective Thomas's letter was just the latest salvo in a long, increasingly hostile war between the police and the prosecutors. Any good defense attorney will try to exploit that at trial, but if you remove Alex Hunter as the prosecutor, the special prosecutor could say, hey, I had nothing to do with that.
And that was reporter Julie Hayden in Colorado.
With this being such a high-profile case with lots of media attention, the grand jury found out what being on this case could mean for their lives, and reporters on the scene are given a stern warning.
Well, the Boulder, Colorado DA says that Jonbenet Ramsey's parents are under what he calls an umbrella of suspicion. This as the grand jury begins hearing evidence in the case. Carol McKinley is in Colorado with the report. Carol.
That's right, Carol. This could make or break the case, really. If the grand jury doesn't come up with an indictment, the case will just be shelved for a while. But this grand jury met for its second full day in secret in what could be a long, tedious process. They were escorted from the Boulder County Justice Center to their cars. After that first full day Tuesday, these are 8 women, 4 men, and 5 alternates who are just now realizing what being on this grand jury is going to mean to their lives. The cameras are going to be on them coming and going, and their names and bios are on the internet, their faces plastered on the local papers. In fact, what we know about them is one is a single mother, one's a grandfather, one is a pyrotechnician, another woman calls herself a good old gal. So at this point, the good old gal and the folks who are just normal people, citizens of Boulder coming in to make this big decision, are learning that their lives are going to be affected, so are their families and their jobs.
How long and how hard are they going to work on this case? Are they going to work 2 days a week, or are they going to work 4 days a week? Are they going to work at night? What kind of hours are they going to keep? Hopefully, given that this is a murder, there will be some sense of urgency now.
The Boulder County Sheriff just came out with a memo and handed it to the media in the parking lot here. It's from the judge presiding over the Ramsey case, reminding us, just a friendly reminder now, to stay 25 feet away from the grand jurors. And if we get any closer, we'll be sent to jail, citing contempt of court charges.
You shouldn't even be allowed to record them. Like, let's be honest, man. You put all of their lives at jeopardy doing that, bro. Talking about their names, where they work, all of that type of stuff. Like, you put people, that's why I don't like it, man. Like, come on, bro. And it's even worse today. It's even worse, man. Like, how does that even allow? Even back then, like, I don't want you put me on a case, I don't want to be known. I'm coming out there in I'm leaving in a ski mask with shades over the ski mask and everything. I don't want you to see nothing.
So today and yesterday were just routine. They're being briefed on the case, but they'll be hearing some interesting evidence, some of which Fox News broke a couple of months ago, but which has been furthered. There was a fiber found on the duct tape, which was over Jonbenet's mouth the night she was murdered and the day she was found, which has matched with Patsy Ramsey's clothing, the clothing she wore on December 26th. Now, I'm Carol McKinley reporting live from Boulder in this second full day. Carol, Mario, back to you.
There have been many suspects over the years in the investigation to find JonBenet's murderer, but in 1999, a new suspect was named, and it was another member of JonBenet's family.
The prime suspect in the murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey is reportedly her brother Burke, who is now 12. Star Magazine says their parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, are now in plea bargaining negotiations with prosecutors in Colorado. The magazine also says the DA wants Patsy Ramsey punished for her alleged role in faking a ransom note and trying to cover up the murder on Christmas night back in 1996.
So, who did it? Could a voice analysis of the people interviewed in connection with the murder help solve the case?
I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
I love that child.
And I know I'm innocent. I know they know I'm innocent.
I've never even met this little girl.
You've heard their stories. You've heard their pleas for innocence.
This family.
But who may be lying and who may be telling the truth?
I did not kill JonBenet.
When you watch John and Patsy Ramsey, do you believe their story? Both refused to testify before a grand jury looking into the murder of their daughter. They also refused to take a polygraph test. So in the end, did they do it, or was it someone else?
Suspected deception in the following segment. This is a voice stress analyzer, more commonly known as the Truster Pro. It's used by 700 police forces across the United States. By analyzing voice, it is designed to calculate percentages of deception. But just like a polygraph test, its reliability is debated, and its results are not admissible in court. Don Bender, a licensed forensic psychotherapist, is trained to operate the Truster, and we called upon his services.
The polygraph measures physiological functions, blood pressure, galvanic skin response, which is sweating, and also respiration. The computerized voice stress analyzer, on the other hand, measures the quality of the voice, particularly the frequency and what are called micro tremors in the vocal cords.
We took interviews from...
Man, that tells you nothing. That tells you nothing, bro. I sweat. My hands get clammy. And I get extra nervous when I'm in that type of environment, in that setting, talking to people and different things. My voice may tremble, it may crack, and I haven't done anything wrong. But I would still fail that test. So they need to throw those tests out. And then why you even giving them if they're not admissible in court? Like, it's just a waste of time. I guess you're going to use it to try to lean on somebody to hope they crack? Force them into a confession? What good has that done us over the years? Stop. Like, I hate hearing about that.
people police had interviewed in connection with the murder of Jonbenet Ramsey. The first was Bud Henderson, whose ex-wife once worked for John Ramsey and allegedly misappropriated money from the Ramsey business.
They also at the time asked me if I could take a lie detector test. Excuse me. And I told them I would think about that.
Mr. Henderson, in general, was quite believable. The only instance where there seemed to be some question of credibility was where he said that he'd be most willing to actually take a polygraph.
Our second test was Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus at the Ramsey's Christmas party the night before Jonbenet was found murdered.
I have little stardust that she gave me.
Deception was indicated in the following segment.
A little girl, and she actually gave Santa a present.
Some indications of exaggeration when he was talking about gifts that Jonbenet had given him.
But the most interesting findings by far were those of Jonbenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey.
I did not kill my daughter, Jonbenet.
The one statement that actually came across as believable was his direct statement that he wasn't directly responsible for killing Jonbenet.
But watch and listen to what the truster indicated at this statement.
We want to say to the killer of your daughter.
We'll find you. We will find you.
Deception was indicated in the following segment.
We'll find you.
According to the voice stress analyzer, there were portions of his statements having to do with the search for the real culprit that seemed less than wholly believable.
Let me assure you that I did not kill Jonbenet.
The voice stress analyzer graphs from Mrs. Ramsey were particularly interesting because on the most relevant question, did she kill Jonbenet, there wasn't a significant reaction that really questioned her believability.
Like her husband, the great percentage of unbelievability comes at this point.
Suspected deception in the following segment.
God knows who you are, and we will find you.
Right there is the we're going to find you. The highest peak on one of the graphs we looked at was the one that occurred right at the end, where she refers to the killer being out there and that you better watch it because they're going to find him. And that showed a peak that was a strong indicator that she didn't wholly believe what you were saying.
In terms of the voice stress analyzer, if someone is stressed, as anyone who has lost a child would be, would that not affect the results?
Not necessarily, because extreme emotion is going to be there whether they're saying something that they believe or something that they're trying to be deceptive about. And what we measure is the difference between the two.
Who killed Jonbenet may forever remain a mystery. Did her parents have a part in it? Only she will ever know. Mary Garofalo, Fox News.
In 2001, the former housekeeper for the Ramseys told her side of the story.
John and Patsy Ramsey's former housekeeper may be able to publish a book on what she knows about the death of Jonbenet Ramsey. Fox's Carol McKinley has more.
Linda Hoffman Pugh spent 8 hours in front of a Boulder County grand jury in January of 1999. She was an important witness because as the housekeeper, she knew a lot about the day-to-day life in the Ramsey household. This is what the grand jury wanted to know. They wanted to find out about Jonbenet's relationship with her mother, about her bedwetting. They wanted to know about a Swiss Army knife found near Jonbenet's body, which came from a hiding place. Hoffman Pugh told them about a blanket which was wrapped around Jonbenet when she was found in the basement, a blanket which would have come from a tiny upstairs dryer. This is information, Hoffman Pugh says, only a Ramsey family member would know. After a full day of questioning centering on Patsy Ramsey and her daughter Jonbenet, Hoffman Pugh was convinced her former employee was the target.
I think that maybe Patsy had multiple personalities. I saw that in her one day. And I think that she may have gotten upset with Jonbenet for some reason, and she may have hit her and not meant to hurt her. I don't think she meant to hurt Jonbenet. I think it was an accident, and then it just continued from there.
Federal Judge Wiley Daniels said the former housekeeper's First Amendment rights would be violated if she were silenced by grand jury secrecy laws. Now, Hoffman-Pugh plans to write a book about her experiences, and now anyone who testified before the Ramsey grand jury can talk about it. We talked with Lynn Wood, the Ramsey's attorney, who says he's happy about this ruling. He has another spin on it, though. He says that the truth will come out about the grand jury, that it didn't have enough evidence to indict his clients. By the way, John and Patsy Ramsey have always maintained they did not kill their daughter, Jonbenet. In Denver, Carol McKinley, Fox News.
So, where is the case today? On November 21st, 2024, Jonbenet's father talked to Good Day New York's Rosanna Scotto and Kurt Menefee. Here's what he had to say.
December 26, 1996, just hours after her family celebrated Christmas, the mother of 6-year-old Jonbenet Ramsey called police to report that her daughter was missing. Soon after, Jonbenet's body would be discovered by her dad in the basement of their home, brutally murdered. The case turned into a national obsession. Everybody wanted to know who killed Jonbenet.
Here we are 28 years later. The murder still remains unsolved, and now a new docuseries looks at the case from a new perspective. Cold Case. Who Killed Jonbenet Ramsey investigates the mishandling of the case by law enforcement and the media. Joining us right now is Emmy-winning director Joe Berlinger and John Ramsey, Jonbenet's father. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
I'll start with you first, John. 28 years after the tragedy, what made you want to revisit it?
Well, I've never left it. We knew pretty immediately that small town police department didn't even have a homicide department
in Boulder,
Colorado. And so our effort really became get help, and they refused help. And they've refused help for 25 years. So that's been a passion of mine, to get the police to do their job, frankly. And that's probably why I would do an interview like this, just keep pressure on the police. And I think we're making some progress.
Where's the emotion, though? That's the part that keeps getting me. I've yet to see, come on, man, if that's your daughter, my daughter, I don't care if it's been 28 years later, the thought of me bringing her up would have me, you know what I mean? Super, super emotional. Oh, bro, give me a minute. It's still hard. Da-da-da-da-da. I've yet to see no type of emotion. And maybe I'm just old school in that sense, but it's just bro, I would be getting choked up. You know what I mean? Frustrated, emotions up and down, stressed out, all of that. And I just don't get that here.
They have been cleaning house lately. A Citizens Review Board recommended termination of 5 of their detectives for poor investigative techniques, performance. One of which was the guy that was our detective. He was more of a roadblock than a helper. And they brought in a new chief from outside the system, which was huge in our book. So we're hoping the new chief will change the culture and accept help. Lots of help has been offered. Federal government, the FBI, cutting-edge DNA labs would like to help if they can. The police have to ask them. That's the way our system works. It's really a screwy system.
If the ransom note told John and Patsy Ramsey specifically not to contact police, why did Patsy then immediately call 911? I think we can all agree there are a lot of weird things about this case, such as the super odd 3-page ransom note and the weird way Jonbenet's father was the one to find her in the house. But what's really unbelievable about this case is the absolute horrible and sloppy job that Boulder PD did in securing the crime scene. Ramsey's allowed 2 separate couples into their home that morning to touch surfaces, walk around, and destroy any potential evidence that the killer could have left behind. When the police did finally arrive on the scene, they were the ones that instructed John Ramsey and his buddy to search the house themselves for Jonbenet. The Netflix documentary didn't share with us any new evidence about the crime itself, but it did show how the media and false reports can skew public opinions about a case. I do believe an intruder had entered the house while the Ramseys were away that night to scope out the house and ultimately murder Jonbenet in the basement. Because the truth of the matter is, there is no conclusive evidence that any of the family members were involved, and DNA evidence has 100% ruled each of them out. According to a recent statement posted by the Boulder PD, it doesn't sound like any additional DNA testing will be done anytime soon, even though we've had many cases solved by familial DNA. John Ramsey's set up a petition to ask the Colorado governor to allow the DNA samples to be tested by an independent agency. And if you'd like to sign that petition, the link's in my bio.
Burke did it. He did it, y'all. He hit her in the head with that flashlight. They got into the fight over the pineapple. He hit her in the head. He did not mean to hit her that hard, but he did. It killed her. And the family didn't want to lose 2 kids. They had just realized they lost one. They didn't want to lose 2, so they covered it up. Y'all, didn't no intruder come in that house. Ain't no intruder. I don't care. No one outside that family could have ever been familiar enough with that house to spend the amount of time an intruder would have had to spend in that house. I don't know where to find a pad and pen in my mama's house. And if I had to look for one, it would still take me time. You mean to tell me an intruder came in that house? That house was a maze, right? Intruder came in that house, found the pen, found the pad, wrote the note, left the note, 3 pages, left the note on the stairs, bonus amount, the same exact amount of money John just got, left it neatly on the stairs, and still killed the child? So then what was the point of writing a note? Suitcase under the window. That suitcase was empty. If a grown adult man pushed off that suitcase to get out that window, 2 things would happen. Number 1, the suitcase would fall over, obviously. Number 2, there would be an indent in that suitcase, or at least a footprint. That's a basement floor, cement. It's dusty. There'd have been a footprint on that suitcase. It wasn't. It wasn't no intruder, y'all. And everybody talking about the intruder had to be familiar with the house. There's no amount of familiarity that could account for the fact that, let's just say the intruder was in the house while the family was at the holiday party. That intruder would have had to know the family's pattern so well that they would have had to be confident that there's no way that anybody in the family would have come down into that basement wherever that intruder was hiding. They left the body in that basement room where Patsy's paint supplies was. What if she got up in the middle of the night with anxiety and wanted to go paint a picture and went down in the room and ran into the intruder to get the paint supplies? You couldn't account for that kind of thing. It wasn't no intruder, y'all. Their family staged that. And, yeah, sorry.
How much do you know about the duct tape in Jonbenet's case? And a brief trigger warning before we get fully into it, because we will be discussing the sensitive event of an innocent child being murdered. Afternoon of December 26th of 1996, John Ramsey found his daughter in the basement of their Boulder, Colorado home. A piece of black duct tape was covering her mouth and he immediately removed it. From John's 1998 police interview, he said, "There was a piece of fairly wide black tape which I immediately took off. Her lips were blue. There was bloody mucus on the tape as well as a perfect set of child lip prints. There were no tongue compressions or indications of resistance. But there was also animal fur on this piece of tape, and this piece of tape was also not that sticky. We know that a new tape roll was not used for this piece of tape because it was torn on both sides. However, the tape roll that this tape belonged to has never been found. The animal fur that was found on it is believed to have been beaver fur. As for where this beaver fur came from, though, that is unknown, but the police wanted to test a few items that they never did. Patsy owned quite a few fur coats as well as fur boots. Melinda Ramsey's boyfriend at the time arrived 2 hours after they discovered Jonbenet's body. And if you don't know, Melinda Ramsey is John Ramsey's other daughter from his first marriage. And he, the boyfriend, said that when he arrived, Patsy Ramsey was standing outside wearing a fur coat. Still, police never got access to any of Patsy's fur items. Now, the lack of stickiness of the tape and the lack...
So that coat is probably long gone. Bro, the more we hear about how they fumbled and just screwed the evidence up on this case, is sad, bro. Especially for that little girl. Like, I'm starting to be convinced that nobody wanted to solve this case back then either.
Back of the roll ever being found indicated that this piece of tape could have been from the back of a piece of artwork. Authorities tested the tape on the back of 2 paintings in Jonbenet's bedroom. There was tape placed on the back of both of these paintings in 1993. However, they were not a match whatsoever to the tape that was found on Jonbenet. They did, however, find black duct tape on the back of other paintings in the house that was a match. However, it was not an exact match. It was a match for the same manufacturer, but it was proven that the pieces of tape were made in different time periods. Therefore, the origins of this tape still remain a mystery.
This is a really tough topic, but I think there is some information that can provide more context around what SA may have happened to Jonbenet while she was being unalived and prior to that. The Netflix documentary talked about the potential SA that happened to Jonbenet while she was being unalived and how the paintbrush came into play. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I do just want to point out that the autopsy found that the paintbrush was inserted once and then removed, which even the FBI thought was odd if it was a PDF file situation. And when it comes to previous evidence of Jonbenet potentially being SA'd, Ashley does link to this 2-part Reddit thread, which I have read through. It is very long. I would need more time than I currently have right now to go through it for you all, but she kind of summarizes here. The Netflix documentary showed Jonbenet's medical history with her doctor from ages 3 to 6 saying that he saw no evidence of SA, but that's because thorough exams weren't done. The pediatrician never looked internally for what signs of SA there could have been and admitted that to the grand jury. And it wouldn't have been typical for him to do unless someone suspected something was going on or he suspected something was going on. It's not a typical thing that happens with a child unless there's some reason to further investigate. The coroner who performed the autopsy didn't see any previous signs of SA, but the Boulder Police Department put together a panel of child SA experts to examine the body and look into the case, including the guy who created the standard for what hospitals and police use to investigate child SA. There were 5 people on the panel, and they all found that Jonbenet's body had signs of SA trauma from before her unaliving, but they couldn't agree on how often or when it occurred. John McCann, who is the one who created the standard for how this is handled, said that some of the abrasions were 7 to 10 days healed. Others said they could have been as old as 2 months. And while others didn't feel like they could put a timestamp on it, they all agreed that it predated her unaliving. So obviously the question becomes, who was doing this to her before her unaliving if the intruder only gained access to her that night based on this very tight timeline that has been constructed? Coming back while I'm editing this to add that those abrasions that were found on Jonbenet internally were determined to be caused by digital penetration, so fingers, and not something like a paintbrush or any other body part. Now, a lot of people point to Jonbenet's UTIs and bedwetting as signs of SA, and while that can be true, it can also just be typical in children, which is why the review that panel did, where they took a transection of her hymen, found that the injury could only have been caused by SA or a major massive injury, and there's no injury like that in her medical record. And no, it couldn't have been caused by riding a bike or riding a horse or anything like that. Now, many point to Jonbenet's brother Burke as a potential person who could have been doing this, specifically because of 2 reasons. First, one of the Ramsey's maids caught him and Jonbenet playing doctor, which kids tend to do, but Burke got really mad at her when she asked what was going on. And then the previous summer, Patsy had told their staff at their house in Michigan that Jonbenet and Burke could not be left alone together, and she apparently told a family friend it was because they were, quote, exploring with each other too much. And now this is really hard to talk about for a few reasons. One, imagining something like this happening to a little girl is always awful. But with the signs that Burke allegedly had of also wetting the bed, it does also raise the question of, was something else happening to him? And was he then perpetrating it onto his little sister? There are a lot of questions there, but all of this is just incredibly sad. And I don't know if we'll ever have any of these answers.